Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third regional updates for the 24-25 school year. You will find the box information has been posted to the chat. You can download the PowerPoint. Please note if you get the login to download the PowerPoint, you just simply close that box out and the PowerPoint will still continue to download. Again, accessing the PowerPoint and resources are listed here. It's also been placed in the chat. We'll continue to place it in through the chat for those of you that may just be coming in. Today's presenter information. From our ED/MD, or Educational Data Management Division, we have our CALPADS Administrator, Diana Casanova, our Education Administrator, Paula Mishima, myself as an ITS1, Sean Walker. From our Special Education Division, we have Dominic Johnson as our ITS1. And from our CSIS team, we have from our Requirements Management Division, Rima Mendez and Heather Coda. And then we have from Client Services, Angela Ratty and Matt Clark. Heather and Summer may be filling in for Rima and Heather for today's meeting now. For our ASL translation, you will see Jake Curtis and also Carol Buck. We'll begin with our agenda for 24-25 EOY Deadlines and Reminders. Then we will go over 25-26 EOY Submission Changes. Please note that special education updates are third on the agenda. We've purposely placed them as third because the two prior items on the agenda are pertinent for all participants. So we ask that you please pay attention during that time. After our special education updates, it'll be followed by our final 24-25 EOY updates. Then we'll roll into a break. And after the break, we'll give you a glimpse into next year's 25-26 updates for the program office's information that we currently have available. As we begin the wrap up, we'll have Angela provide resources, and then we will display the 25-26 regional calendar. Finally, if time permits, we will answer final questions. Again, please take note of the questions and guidelines as previously mentioned. Also, we have a lot of information to be able to cover for this regional meeting, so we have been limited on time for questions after each section. Please feel free, though, to place your questions in the Q&A, and we will do our best to respond. Thank you to our additional panelists that continue to support in the Q&A. First up, for our 24-25 EOY deadlines. As a reminder, the pared down calendar is listed here on screen. Congratulations to you all because you are officially in the EOY homestretch. We'll review best practices for EOY, always noting that to meet the milestone deadlines for July 11th for 2025 is key, and certifying by July 25th. Also, for your July 25th, we strongly encourage you to have SELPA approval. If need be, you can always recertify by August 8th. So again, for our best practices in meeting the no fatal errors milestone, LEAs should resolve all fatal errors by July 11th. Resolving all errors by this date ensures that LEA staff have adequate time to review error-free reports for accuracy. Certifying EOY 3 first. LEAs often update enrollment and exits and student demographic data when reviewing EOY 3. And since EOY 3 is a large submission, LEAs tend to certify EOY 3 last. However, when LEAs certify EOY 1, 2, or 4 before they certify EOY 3, if any enrollment or exits of student demographic data are updated as part of reviewing EOY 3, then there will be inconsistencies with the student certified data that was earlier submitted with EOY 1, 2, and 4. So for this reason, since all submissions have the same deadlines, LEAs should certify EOY 3 first. Certifying EOY 4 at the same time of EOY 3 or closely following EOY 3 is preferred because this minimizes the possibility of inconsistent data for your special education students. Certifying EOY 3 and 4 at the same time based on the revision created on the same day allots for consistency between the two submissions. So again, remember to certify EOY 3 first or at the same time of EOY 4. Continuing on with our best practices for reporting summer high school graduates. Last year, we put out Flash 274. You'll find Flash 274 going into the chat shortly for your review because it details out how to exit out your students. As a best practice, the CTE maintains including students who graduated by August 15th in prior years for the graduate counts and rates. LEAs should continue to identify their summer graduates by exiting students from the regular school year and submitting a one-day summer enrollment. LEAs should not submit an enrollment to CALPADS for the period of time that the students were enrolled in summer school and completing courses for graduation. Remember that the CALPADS does not collect summer enrollment. LEAs should only submit a one-day enrollment and exit for the student that completed the graduation requirements on or before August 15th. The one-day enrollment exit must reflect the actual date that the student completed summer school and their graduation requirements. LEAs must submit the one-day enrollment exit from the school that is granting the diploma, which may or may not be the school where the student attended in the regular school year. We recognize by submitting a one-day summer enrollment for the same school year that the STAS exempt file was needed and all vendors may not be able to support this since the STAS file is a full replacement. For this reason, the CALPADS office is looking into SCNR 0718E3 validations and business rules for summer graduates only. Once we've completed an analysis, we will ensure to share out that information. Again, though, the standard practice is to be able to enter in for your summer graduates that one-day enrollment and exit and completion record based upon the school that the student actually attended. Additionally, for our best practices, we're addressing the gap between the close of the amendment window and the cohort pool. In 24-25, the course completion and CTE and one-year graduate completer counts will not be aligned with the cohort pool because the EOY amendment window closes on August 8th and the cohort pool is on August 15th. To address this issue, you need to submit the completion status for students expected to graduate by August 15th before certifying your EOY 3 submission. Using an exit date of August 15th or earlier is permissible. Where would you get this information? Your local LEA administrators. Your counselors, your principals will have this information and be able to provide to you the students that they are accurate, will complete graduation requirements. We are not asking you to guess, but we are asking you to be thorough in your communication across your LEA. If you fail to be able to submit your completer information, the timelines and the exit dates and where the students will or will not appear are all represented in the table on the screen. Again, students may appear in cohort reports if they are identified as part of the 24-25 cohort, i.e. they're first-time ninth graders in 21-22. Next, for our best practices. As always, we highly encourage LEAs to complete their submissions and certify early, i.e. the milestones. This information can continue to be found in the EOY roadmap and calendar. The roadmap has been linked in the chat for those of you that have yet to access it. Uploading any last updates at least 1 day prior to the close of the amendment window. LEAs must do so in order to make sure that the data that is submitted in your final uploads are recognized in your reports. It takes time to be able to get that revision back, and that revision is shown in your reports. We want to ensure that what your revisions show are what is your data, or what's reflective of your data that's provided in your file uploads. This is largely in part because your certified data, especially for EOY 3 submissions, are used to calculate for the California School Dashboard indicators. Remember, there will be no opportunity to update publicly viewable and or certified EOY data following the close of the amendment window. For no opportunities to update your data and the strict deadline of the close of the amendment window, please see Flash 290. Speaking of the dashboard, earlier we placed out the 24-25 handbook and we released that information through the CALPADS Digest. On the screen, it shows you the direct web page to be able to access the CALPADS to the Dashboard handbook and or the direct download. This handbook should be used to verify your EOY certified reports because, again, what's certified is going to be used for your dashboard, and this shows you the connectivity to your data and the fantastic work that you do. Again, ensuring its accuracy, though, is key. That's all for our best practices. And with that, I will turn it over to our wonderful Paula Mishima for the 25-26 EOY Submission Changes.
Sean talked to you about a couple kind of workarounds for 24, 25 end of year. And those are workarounds that we don't want to continue as workarounds. The couple that she talked about was the fact that you have to do something kind of different in order to account for that gap that occurs because the end of year submission ends on August 8th, and then the poll for the cohort is 1 week later. She also talked about our best practices now is to first certify your end of 3 submission, closely followed by end of 4, because otherwise the data in the different submissions when they're certified at different times result in basically different data that are certified. So these are just some of the problems that we currently have that we want to address in 25, 26. So if you go to the next slide. We are going to make some changes to address these problems, and hopefully these are positive changes for you all. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a new end of year 1 submission. And we know at first that this will be a little confusing because, we currently have an end of year 1 submission. So we're using the same term. So you need to kind of have a brain reset here. So the new end of year 1 submission will be the current end of year 2, 3, and 4 submissions. And all of these submissions will basically now be merged into one end of year submission with the same certification deadline. For end of year 1, the new end of year 1 submission, SELPAs will be required to approve and certify the end of year 1 submission because it basically includes the prior end of year 3 and end of year 4 submissions, which they had to approve. Then we're going to have a new end of year 2 submission where we decouple the end of year 1, the current end of year 1 submission, which is all your course completion and CTE pathway data, and we're moving that so it has a different certification deadline, which will be aligned with when we pull the data for the cohort. So that'll be after August 15th, which is the graduate cutoff date. Okay. So the end of year 1, the new end of year 1 submission will have an earlier certification deadline than the new end of year 2 submission, which will have a deadline that will always align with the cohort poll. The other thing that we're doing is moving the current certification of the 1-year graduate and completer data, which is currently in end of year 3, we're moving that to the new end of year 2 submission so that we're pulling the data for both the cohort and 1-year grads and completers at the same time. So all of that data will be aligned. Okay. And then in terms of kind of dates, the cohort poll, as I said, will always be aligned now with the certification of the new end of year 2 submission. Since the graduate cutoff date is August 15th, then the cohort poll and the certification of the new end of year 2 submission will always be at least the next day, August 16th. If August 15th happens to land on a Friday or a Saturday, then the deadline will always be the following Monday. Okay, so we don't, even though I know you all work the weekends often, we don't want to have to expect you to work the weekend. So we'll always make that certification deadline on the following Monday, should the graduation cutoff date of August 15th land on Friday or basically the weekend. And we understand that if the last day for students to graduate is August 15th, it's not necessarily giving you a whole lot of time to upload any late students on the next day. But unfortunately, we're constrained by the fact that we need to get that data pulled and over to our folks who develop the dashboard because there's a new statutory deadline for when the dashboard has to be published, which moves up a whole month this year to October 15th, or moves up a whole month in 25, 26. So again, the next 2 slides are just going to hammer home the change in thinking about these terms. End of year 1 in 25, 26 will be the previous end of year 2, 3, and 4 minus the 1-year grads and completers. End of year 2 will be the previous end of year 1, plus the 1-year grads and completers. SELPAs will need to approve end of year 1. Next slide. And now this slide will show the actual dates for 25-26. You can see that the end of year 1 is now the close of the amendment window will be July 31st, which is 1 week earlier than it is this year. And we actually first put this date out there in September of 2023 when the legislation passed establishing the deadlines for the dashboard. And, we know it doesn't give LEAs a lot of time, especially those LEAs that rely on their site staff to come back after summer to review those reports. But we're just constrained by statute, basically. And then next year, August 15th, which is the graduate cutoff date, lands, I think, on a Friday or Saturday or something, but it makes the end of year 2 deadline as well as a cohort poll on August 17th, which is a Monday. Next slide. So hopefully this is all positive changes for you, but we just again wanted to articulate what are some of the benefits of making this change. First, it provides you guys more time to submit and certify your graduates and completers, especially for those students who are graduating in the summertime. It also provides you more time to submit and certify course completion, career tech, and your work-based learning data. It provides LEAs at least one more day to submit those students who actually graduate on August 15th. This year, as you know, it's on the same day. August 15th is also the certification, or the day that we're doing the cohort poll. It increases data quality because we're ensuring that you're certifying data on the same set of students. And this is something that you might not have thought about, but right now you might have noticed that when you look at your errors for the different submissions, there are certain errors that are repeated in each submission. Now you kind of won't see that. There'll just be one set of errors for the end of year 1 submission and one set of errors for the end of year 2 submission. This actually also results in us being able to, or CALPADS being able to do your revisions faster. This is because previously revisions were running on all 4 submissions all the time. Now it'll be just running on 2 submissions, which will actually, we believe it'll reduce the amount of time the revisions take. So hopefully that is a positive thing for you. And so I think the main thing that's going to be different is even though currently the certification deadline for all 4 submissions is the same, we know that many LEAs kind of would certify and put to bed one of the easier submissions first to kind of get it out of the way and then move on to the next. So you won't be able to do that anymore. However, what you will be able to do is maybe look at certain reports, get them done and out of the way and not think about them, but you just can't push the button to certify them. You'll have to wait till everything is done. Okay, so hopefully this will be a positive thing for everybody. Next slide. And this is where I get to move it over to Matt. And I don't think there's too many Q&As here. Let me just, since there's just a couple. Is work-based learning in end of year 2? Yes. Everything that's currently in end of year 1 now will move to end of year 2. And I believe Meredith is answering the other question. So take it over, Matt.
All right. Thank you so much, Paula. And hello, everyone. Please give me a moment to share my screen here. All right, let's go ahead and get going here. So Senate Bill 114 created the CALPADS Pathway Towards Differentiated Assistance, or DA, introducing new DA eligibility criteria for school districts and county offices based on CALPADS performance. This is significant because it increases LEA accountability. For the first time, the CDE is able to uphold expectations for how and when data are reported in CALPADS. And in many ways, this acknowledges the importance of timely and accurate data being reported and the need for the good work that you all do. These data are the sources of millions of dollars in funding and are used in both state and federal accountability mechanisms. The DA eligibility requirements outlined in Senate Bill 114 are twofold. First, districts need to submit data according to the processes and timelines outlined in Education Code 6900F, which are established by the CDE. And second, county superintendents will be required to provide DA services focused on the school district's data management practices. CSIS is available as a partner in DA remediation services for LEAs eligible for DA using the CALPADS pathway. We have a variety of tools and facilitation methods to assist county offices and districts in determining improvement targets and remediation activities to be incorporated into LCAP initiatives or standalone remediation plans. All right, the CALPADS pathway to DA is being implemented in a phased approach. In the 23 to 24 academic year, CALPADS DA eligibility criteria were based on whether LEAs were able to certify a data collection. We did not focus on deadlines in 23-24, but rather a binary yes-no indication with regards to the certification of a CALPADS submission. And I'm happy to report that no LEAs became eligible for CALPADS DA in the 23-24 academic year. This academic year, we've used certification by final CALPADS deadlines as the criteria for inclusion in differentiated assistance calculations. So any LEA that was unable to certify the Fall 1 or Fall 2 collections, or who will be unable to certify the end of year data collections by final deadlines, will become eligible for 1 year of DA through the CALPADS pathway. To ensure that LEAs have sufficient time to review and validate their data before the deadline, the CDE now publishes recommended milestones for having 0 fatal errors on the CALPADS reporting calendar page. And Sean did show us this milestone date a few slides back as well. It's recommended that LEAs achieve 0 fatal errors in the end of year data collections by July 11th this academic year. So July 11th is our error-free milestone date. Senate Bill 114 additionally states that LEAs who fail to certify accurate, complete, and correct data will become eligible for DA under the CALPADS pathway. And for 25-26, we will be adding data quality and accuracy eligibility criteria for CALPADS DA. We're currently in the midst of developing guidance for the 25-26 quality criteria, and we'll be communicating that guidance in detail as it becomes ready for implementation. What I can say now about the quality criteria for DA is very general. We know that specialized areas of expertise are necessary to verify the quality and accuracy of data in CALPADS at both the state and the local levels. Within the CDE, different department staff have expertise over different data sets that are contained in CALPADS. Therefore, data quality for CALPADS DA will be a department-wide effort where staff with programmatic expertise will perform data quality checks in collaboration with the CALPADS office. CDE department leaders are currently determining the data quality eligibility criteria for CALPADS DA. And we don't have specific criteria information for you today. But as a clue into what these checks may look like, the CDE Special Education Division currently performs data quality checks outside of CALPADS DA for restraint and seclusion data. And we do anticipate a similar form to these checks will be incorporated into CALPADS DA for program areas within the CDE. And we will release the quality criteria in a phased approach as CDE department staff become ready to support CALPADS DA. All right, the additional criteria for CALPADS DA in 25-26 will be based on data quality. And a critical factor in ensuring a high quality of data in CALPADS is including subject matter experts from departments with expertise over specific data sets in the review process for CALPADS reports locally. If a CALPADS coordinator needs to verify that the FTE reported for their credentialed staff member is accurate, they'll need to work with human resources and with credential analysts. If a CALPADS coordinator is determining how to report a student with a behavioral incident who is a student with disabilities, they'll need to consult with behavior staff, special education folks, and even the SELPA. Without this kind of cross-departmental collaboration around CALPADS data, the quality of the data in CALPADS suffers. And as a result, things like funding, accountability, decision-making, and local policy can be affected by unreliable data. And this is why it's imperative to include the whole village in your CALPADS reporting processes, particularly in light of the data quality criteria implementation for CALPADS DA in the 25-26 academic year. This slide contains a sample of critical reports in CALPADS data collections with the school site and district level staff that we recommend that you include in the reports review process for each of them. This slide is not meant to be exhaustive. There are important reports in CALPADS submissions that are not listed here, and there are local determinations on who is involved in the reports review process. This slide is just meant to clue you into the cross-departmental collaboration that is necessary to achieve high-quality data, which is particularly relevant with the data quality criteria implementation for CALPADS DA in the 25-26 academic year. And with no questions on CALPADS DA in the Q&A here, I'll go ahead and take this time to turn it over to Dominic Johnson with the Special Education Division.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us here. Sean, we're happy to join you. Just going over some of the special education updates. We are hosting a statewide virtual CALPADS Special Education Data Roadshow. Be available or will be hosted on June 3rd from 1 to 4 p.m. Anyhow, you can use this QR code to access the registration link, as well as clicking on this link as well. Next slide, please. This session will train local special education data coordinators and SOPA level staff on the updates and changes for the CALPADS end of year submission, as well as other special education related data. The training will cover IEP implementation data collection, preparing for the end of year, including end of year deadlines, an example end of year calendar, and some local special education data system audits, data submission and error resolution, as well as the highest frequency data discrepancies. We will review end of year reports and talk about how those data inform your state performance plan indicators and other data used in the annual determination letter. We will discuss timeline compliance prong 2 and the CALPADS monitoring report 1621, and then ending with other local auditing you can do in preparation for fall 1 of 2025, as well as some potential 2025-26 changes. Next slide, please. Updating students with disability status for the graduates who earn a regular diploma. Please ensure that students with disabilities are exited from special education in your special education data system. Students who graduate with a standard diploma should have a students with disabilities status record effective the day after their enrollment exit, with a status of 4, not eligible, and a non-participation reason code of 30, no longer eligible. This ensures that the graduating student is attributed correctly to the Students with Disabilities student group for the California School Dashboard. So again, the eligibility status and non-participation reason codes of not eligible and no longer eligible should have an effective start date the day after the enrollment exit. And do remember, this only applies to your students with disabilities who are graduating with a standard diploma. Next slide, please. the annual Determination Prong II Compliance data pool. In August of 2025, after the amendment window closes, the Special Education Division will pull the late meeting data again. LEAs will be accountable for those students who were enrolled, eligible, and participating on Census Day, October 2nd, 2024, who had overdue plan review and/or reevaluation meetings as of Census Day, who were still enrolled in the same district as of the August Prong 2 data pool, and whose meetings are still overdue. On the first Monday of every month through July 2025, the Special Education Division will send the timeline noncompliance counts to every SELPA director, so LEAs are able to monitor your progress on these timelines. Next slide, please. Exiting no-show enrollments with the same date as the enrollment start date for SPED reports. When using exit code N470, the enrollment exit date should equal the enrollment start date. Although CALPADS allows for the exit code N470 date to be a day before the start date, CALPADS reports don't acknowledge the enrollment, and the students end up being excluded from the reports. Using an exit date equal to the enrollment start date when using exit code N470 will ensure students are captured in the 1622 and 1623 Special Education Status and Non-Participation Counts reports. Next slide, please. End of year 3 and end of year 4 certification. Thank you, Sean. As discussed earlier, to ensure that all enrollments for students with disabilities are exited appropriately, LEAs should certify end of year 3 and end of year 4 together. Ideally, LEAs should try to certify end of year 3 and end of year 4 at the same time based on a revision created on the same day, so that the information is consistent between the two submissions. If end of year 4 is certified prior to end of year 3, then reports 1622 and 1623, the special education status reports, will not reflect the most accurate student enrollment exit codes. Thus, federal reporting on students with disabilities exiting special education will not be accurate. Let's take a look in the Q&A and see if there are any questions. Vita asks, what about SPED students graduating as a completer and not returning? Do we still need to use the next day as an exit date? No, the guidance is only applicable to students graduating with a standard high school diploma. MJ asks, do they currently send the non-compliance counts now for this school year? Yes, those non-compliance counts for your timelines are applicable to this academic year's annual determination letter. Jacqueline
Thank you.
asked, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead and answer your last question, and then we'll move on.
Got it. If a student no-shows, why should they show up in reports? So N470s are often used to exit when students are being assessed for special education. And so we do need to report those assessments. And if the student is exited with an N470 from the assessment enrollment for preschoolers or private school students, then that assessment will not report accurately in your end of year. Thank you, Sean. I'll look to address the rest of these comments or questions in the Q&A directly.
Thank you so kindly, Dominic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So moving on in the interest of time, just so we can be able to cover all information for you. Again, you can still post your questions in the Q&A, and we will do our best to be able to respond to them. So for CALPADS 24-25 EOY updates, we'll start off with LTEL, or long-term English learners. There are two noticeable definitions for LTELs. One is the table here illustrates both of those definitions. One is from Educational Code 313.1, and the other is 52052. The definitions encompass the different grade levels, which are combined with the varying grade spans covered by each dashboard indicator. Those dashboard indicators contribute to the difference of the count in LTEL students. For example, DataQuest. Only students enrolled in grades 6 through 12 are included. However, for the dashboard, the counts will vary for each dashboard indicator because it covers varying grade spans. Examples are the suspension rate indicator. It displays LTELs students in TK through grade 12. The graduation rate indicator in college and career focuses on students within a cohort. And then conversely, the chronic absentee indicator accounts for students in TK through grade 8. Furthermore, the academic and English learner progress indicators reflect LTEL students who participated in the assessments during the academic year. So just be cognizant of the two different definitions and where your LTEL data is coming from. With that, we highlight for the LTEL definitions, and we are placing out a flash. Again, this flash is forthcoming, and we hope to have it out to you by middle of June. Don't hold me to that date, please. So since the 24 dashboard marked the first inclusion of LTEL data, it's ultimately decided to implement a two-phased process, which includes the new group and subgroup of LTEL. Within this two-phase process, we rolled out much information to you in the September regional and then again in the March regional. For that initial phase, again, we are going with, for May of this year, the students will be identified as LTEL in CALPADS and on the cohort reports. Those cohort reports will include your 15.1 and your 15.2, and then also your cumulative enrollment extract. Drilling down to that 15.1 and 15.2 reports. So for 15.1 specifically, we've added the LTEL indicator filter. And for 15.2, we've added the LTEL filter along with the column for yes, no for the itemized students. For the CENR extract, and CENR is yes, CENR. It's important to note for this one, it added the provisional LTEL start dates, the ELAS status start date, the student initial school enrollment start date, and then the earliest SCNR enrollment start date, and the earliest EL status start date. What those will look like. For 15.1, you'll see here on the screen in the boxed red that the English learners, long-term English learners has that yes or no filter button there. And then for 15.2, you'll see again the filter here along with the yes or no column down bottom there. For the CENR extract, you'll notice that 44 through 48 were added along with the file element, the file type, the max length, and the source of the information. This information is all listed in the CALPADS user manual. The CALPADS user manual goes into even more depth, providing you the validations and business rules. Again, moving on with that two-phased approach for the second phase, it will be rolled out for 25-26, and it will cover your 1.21 cumulative enrollment for Fall 1, and then what is now your EOY 3, but will become your EOY 1, your 8.1 report. What those reports will look like, we will showcase those in future regionals. So returning your EOY ODS reports and aligning your new ODS reports to the Snapshot reports. For EOY 1, we understand the need for the following ODS reports to be returned to be reflective of the data on the dashboard. In the interim, however, our workaround is the ODS extracts should be pulled for your CRSC, CTE, Weebler or WBLR for LEAs that need to make corrections and show proof for audit corrections. It's necessary since your certified or snapshot reports cannot reflect changes being made after certification. So if you are making corrections to these data sets and these reports, again, you'll need to pull the associated extracts for corrections reasons with your auditors. Again, we always ensure that to the best of your ability, make sure that your LEA administrators are reviewing these reports prior to your certification. So therefore, you don't have to go back and do this. And with that, I will pass it on to our CALPADS administrator, Diana Casanova, to review your parent highest education levels.
Thank you, Sean. All right, good morning, everybody. Great to be here. So to improve the quality of the parent guardian data and address gaps in existing validations, the CDE consolidated validations into a new set of more comprehensive, effective, and understandable validations. And I will walk through them with you and point you to the flash that we recently sent out. So Parent Guardian 1 highest education level code is now only conditionally required. So if any Parent Guardian 1 field is populated, first name, last name, highest education level, then all three must be populated. Parent Guardian 2 highest education level is now always optional. If Parent Guardian 2 highest education level is populated, then the Parent Guardian 2 first and last name must also be populated. Validations on input will be SINF, SINF-related errors. So for example, in the SINF 0453 and SINF 0722, this will be on file input. Data discrepancies will be SENR related with the error assigned to the LEA of most recent overlapping SENR for correction. And those will be data discrepancies and certified data discrepancies on SENR 0453 F1, SENR 0453 ER, SENR 0722 F1, and SENR 0722 E3. So refer to Flash 302, which is currently getting posted to the web, but check your inboxes because it went out last week. There is a lot to read about the rationale, the context, background about it, as well as more details around the changes we've made and a list of the validations and those being disabled.
So we're starting it off soft, coming back from break, and just your end of year rollover reminders. Remember that these rollover reminders are standard. However, for those of you that might be new joining, it's always nice to know this information, or to those of you that have been with us for years, just have this reminder because we don't want anything getting left in the cracks or falling between the cracks, I should say. So our first up reminder is about assessing students for the initial LPAC during summer. Remember that for students assessed with the initial LPAC and initial alternative LPAC during the summer, they must have the following data submitted. They must have that SCNR file, for recorded with the student's expected start date. That start date should be the first day of school. And then also they should have the CELA record with the ELAS of a TBD, and then that ELAS start date. And the ELAS TBD, the primary language should be anything other than English or American Sign Language within the ELAS record. Also, for the SIM file, it's important to have that file up because it records the student's addresses, and if the LEA is sending out printed score reports to the parent, ETS needs the SIM file to be able to capture the addresses and parent guardian information. Please note for the SENR enrollment start date, it is allowed to be after the CELA status start date, but those files can only be submitted between July 1st and August 31st. Again, and that's for summer initial LPAC testing or summer initial alternative LPAC testing. Next reminder is for your 5.9 former foster youth student list report. The student list does not span over academic years, and the foster reports do get purged on June 30th every year. After weekly foster updates that are made to CALPADS on July 1st, the former foster youth report will be refreshed and it will begin to show no students. Students will be added as they're exited from the foster system in the 25-26 academic year. Therefore, to keep historical records of the former foster youth for the 24-25 academic year, please remember to download reports 5.9 as the CSV file or save a copy of the report prior to June 30th. Next, as a reminder, is for direct certification. For direct certification counts during the summer, please remember to download your DC extracts again prior to June 30th. For students who were directly certified for CALPADS in 24-25 before they are refreshed on July 1st. Regarding exits at the end of the academic year, only students with an exit reason code equal to E155 or E156 will be exited over the direct certification matching. Those are the only exits sent over for the direct certification matching. Sorry about that. Your DC counts could be significantly lower than expected during the summer months until your subsequent enrollments for the 25-26 school year are added. Again, this is just to say if you need that file, go ahead and download it and save it for your local records. Continuing for direct certification, but focusing on the match enhancement. So the DC match is conducted currently by our Department of Healthcare Services or DHCS. However, that legislation was passed requiring for the CDE to be able to conduct our own match using our enhanced technology. What this means for LEAs is additional matches from the CDE will be added to your download beginning July 1. There are no changes for the LEAs to be able to do. All this means is that you can get back. Hopefully, our return in matches and correct matches will hopefully add additional matches to your direct cert and reduce some of the workload from you all. Our next reminder is around the TK age validations. This is the last year of the TK age validations. As described in Educational Code 60900, it requires for CALPADS to collect TK data as a separate grade level than kindergarten data to facilitate and the reporting of your TK students. Remember that for the TKH validation, it is for students that are 4 years old as of September 1st. This means that students can be enrolled at the beginning of the school year when they are 3 years old and 10 months because they will be 4 years old on or before September 1st. These students will be reflected in your LCFF reports for 1.17 and for your TK students, again, as long as they are 4 years old. And with that, I will pass it on to our wonderful Paula Mishima for our additional reminder for the migrant codes.
Anyway, so the final update for kind of the school year rollover, or the fiscal year rollover, is beginning July 1, 2025, that we are retiring the migrant code 135. The reason being is we will start to give you all who the migrant students are versus you having to give them to us. The authoritative source for migrant students is actually in the Migrant Student Information System network, MSIN, and we, over the last year or so, have been working with MSIN to populate their system with SSIDs. And so now we are confident that we're able to get from them the list of SSIDs of students who are migrant students and then provide that to you guys. You will receive a report as well as an extract that you can download and upload into your student information system. The report and extract will probably follow and come with the school year rollover later on in the summer, but you will not be able to provide to us migrant code starting July 1. So hopefully that is good news for you all. Okay, so then moving on to some of the two new collections for the 25-26 school year, specifically attendance recovery and expanded learning programs. There will be a flash coming out hopefully next week that will cover both of these collections. Since they're kind of similar in some ways, folks get them really confused. So we're putting both of the topics on one flash and then kind of comparing and contrasting them a little bit. So what I'm going to do today is a lot of the information will be repeated in the flash, and I provided a lot of very specific information in the slides for today, but I'm not going to talk to each of them. I just wanted to get you the information since the flash is not yet out. So regarding attendance recovery program, just to step back and give you some sense about the purpose for this program, the legislature passed this program because they were concerned about a couple of things. One is that with all the, climate change, natural disaster kinds of things that have been happening here in California and actually across the country, there was concern that, school districts were losing out on ADA funding. So they wanted to provide districts a way to recoup some of that funding by providing this optional program whereby if they opted to run this program, they had an opportunity, LEAs had opportunity to earn more average daily attendance. There was also concern that it negatively or unfairly, I guess, impact the chronic absenteeism rate since students, sometimes couldn't get to school no fault of their own or no fault of the school. So they also wanted to see that if these recouped days of attendance were then added to the chronic absenteeism rate, whether or not that would, what kind of impact that would have on chronic absenteeism. So most of the program really surrounds the recovery of ADA days, and it's not really related to CALPADS. So we've provided here a landing page for AR hosted by our School Fiscal Services Division, and it provides a lot of information and a lot of FAQs and so forth as to the rules around this program and how you guys will collect average daily attendance. So I really encourage you to really look at that at their website. You will be reporting the average daily attendance that are earned through attendance in AR programs through their apportionment data collection web application, not through CALPADS. However, because of the chronic absenteeism interest, CALPADS is impacted. We need to be able to, on a student level basis, identify students who recouped some AR days because it will impact the student's chronic absenteeism rate. So we are making one change to CALPADS to collect this information. And I just want to emphasize that the stats file will remain the same. All the other fields on the stats should not be changed. You should populate them as you have always populated them. However, there will be an additional field called attendance recovery days. We display it here on this slide, in which you would populate with the total number of attendance recovery days that the student earned during the year from July 1 to June 30th. Now, there's some rules about that, which we will get to, and some of them are articulated on this slide. One, I'm taking these bullets a bit out of order, but a student is limited to a total of 10 AR days in the school year at an LEA, or the number of absences the student accrued during that year, whichever is less. Okay, so if any one student can't earn more than 10, and they can't earn more than the total number of days that they were absent if it's 10 or less. The days that a student earns can be banked, which means that they can attend AR programs and earn AR days before school starts and before any absences are accrued. Those are some of the main rules that I think impact the collection of this data for CALPADS. Now, when you populate the stats file with the total number of AR days, you're just going to be reporting the total day. You're not going to be populating anything more specific than that. However, we wanted to make sure you understood that for audit reasons and for determining whether the number of hours a student attended an AR session met the ADA requirements, you will need to collect more specific information. You'll need to track and maintain records for hours per student that a student attends an AR program. However, again, in CALPADS, it's simplified to simply the number of total days. So you'll have to kind of map the attendance accounting into full days for CALPADS reporting. These are some of the validations that we will have on this new field. I won't talk about them specifically here, but the main validation will be that we will validate whether or not a student has 10 days, that the field is populated with either 10 days or the total number of absences, whichever are less. That's probably the main thing to understand. This question comes up a lot, so I thought I'd just put it here. And that is, must attendance in an AR program overlap a student's enrollment where the absences occurred? And the answer is no. As I said before, students may bank days before a student is even enrolled at a school, and they may earn absences basically before any absences occur. So because of that ability to bank days, it gets a little confusing, right, as to where you attribute an AR day to in terms of what school that student is attending. So I'm not going to go through all the scenarios. These are going to be in the flash, but just to give you an idea of how this kind of plays out. So if a student earns 5 AR days during the summer at an LEA, then that student enrolls in a school at that LEA. And at that school, they were absent for 5 days. Then they can report or earn 5 AR days on the STAS. That's like the most easy, straightforward example. It can get complicated depending if the student moves around. So I'm just going to go over one other scenario. This is where a student is enrolled in an LEA and earns 10 AR days before school even starts. The student then enrolls in LEA, but within that school, they transfer 3 times and they end up being absent 5 times at each of those schools. So their total absences at the LEA is 15, but they can only earn, and they only did earn, 10 AR days. And at this point, it's up to the district how they want to allocate those AR days to which school. Okay, that would be the LEA's choice. We are not requiring that it be at one of the specific schools. So those are just some examples of some of the flexibility, I guess you would say, under this program. Okay, so the next program I wanted to talk about, or next new collection, is the expanded learning programs. Unlike AR, which is a new program, these expanded learning programs have existed for some time, but what's new is collecting data about them. There was a bill that passed, AB 1113, that requires us to begin collecting some data on expanded learning programs, which includes the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, or ELOP, the 21st Century Learning Centers program, which is a federal program and has 2 components. One is the elementary middle school component, and the other is the high school component called ASSETS. And then there's the After School Education and Safety Program, or ACES, which was created by the voters through initiative. So we have these 3 existing expanded learning programs. Research has showed that students who participate in these after-school programs do have improved outcomes. And so the state has made a large investment in these programs, and they have a goal of expanding universal access to such programs to all school-aged children, youth in the state. However, the state really has no idea its progress in meeting these goals because student level data is not collected for all of the programs, particularly the ELOP program. So what 1113 requires CTE to do is to begin collecting from LEAs who are receiving funding for any of those 3 programs, whether or not students are registered, and for those students who are registered, how many days did they attend one of the programs during the year. So what LEAs are going to be required to submit in 25-26, and it will be part of the new end of year 1 submission, are any students who are enrolled in an ELP program. And enrolled is defined as the parents, guardians have signed a registration form for the student in any of the 3 programs. Then there will be a second piece of information we'll be asking for, which is the total number of days the student attended any one of the programs during the academic year, July 1 to June 30th. An ELP attendance day is a lot looser definition than they are for AR days, where it's a very specified number of hours that students must attend to accrue 1 day of AR attendance. For ELP, a student could attend 5 minutes, 2 hours, or they can go in 2 different sessions, the morning session and afternoon session on 1 day. All of that is considered 1 day of attendance in an ELP program. So very different metric there. When you submit this data, we've created a brand new file. It's going to be called the LEA program or LEAP file. The reason why we did not just add a new program code to the SPRG is because this program kind of operates a little differently in that students might be enrolled in one school and go to an ELP program at another site. They might attend during the summer or an intersession when they're not enrolled in a school. It all makes it really hard for LEAs, for you all to tell us what school the student is enrolled at when they're attending an ELP program. So that's why we created a new LEA level file called the LEAP file. And on that file, it's going to have the basic same fields that all our files have, which are the reporting LEA, the academic year, the SSID, and the local student ID. And then there will be two additional fields relevant to ELP. One is the LEA Education Program Code, which is going to be code 194, Expanded Learning Programs. And we're creating basically a new code set, an LEA Education Program code set, because who knows, in the future, there might be other education programs that are more efficiently collected at the LEA level. Then there's going to be another field, expanded learning days, which is the total number of days a student attended one of the ELP programs during the year. And what's important here is that if a student is registered, you enter the education program code. If they end up never showing up, then you would enter 0 in the expanded learning program day field. And the reason for this is that right now, LEAs are required for ELOP to register a certain number of their students. However, whether or not they attend is not, no one knows, right? And so there's an interest in seeing how many students register versus how many actually end up attending. Next slide. Okay, this is the definition of the new education program code 194. And these are some of the validations that will be on the new LEAP file. I won't read them here. As you can see, there's still the little few things that need to be fleshed out. This new file will be implemented prior to the opening of end of year next year. So it's not, all the details haven't quite been figured out, but mostly they have been, and we have been communicating with their student information system vendors so they can be ready for this. There will be a new certification report that shows at the, the total number of ELP participants in your LEA, as well as the number of days. There will be a drill down to student level report, so you will see the students that make up those aggregate counts. So we added this slide, this table, which will also be in the flash, just to kind of compare AR with ELP reporting, because folks get really confused about it. I'm not going to go through each of these because mostly I've talked about it already. For example, you're submitting data for AR on the stats file, you're submitting data for ELP on the LEAP file. I will, however, point out one of these rows that we get a lot of questions on, and that is, may attendance in an AR program count as a day of attendance in an ELP program? The answer is yes, if the AR program is funded with ELOP funds. And I just want to stress this because it is different than what I might have said at a Q&A or somewhere else, because at one point it was different. At one point, the answer was a straight no. But now it is a yes, as long as the AR program is funded with ELOP funds. It does not, however, work the other way around, where an ELP program will never count for attendance recovery program, mostly because the AR program has a lot of strict requirements regarding it. So the other difference, well, I will go to the next slide. It kind of speaks to that last row is, so what do you need to do to get ready for AR and ELP reporting to CALPADS or for the programs themselves? For AR, I would really encourage you to review the requirements in the 25-26 audit guide, which is now available, because that will really tell you what type of data you will need to maintain locally. It's going to be a lot more detailed than what we're collecting in CALPADS. If you don't have any system right now that is collecting attendance for this kind of program, you might check out what functionality your student information system has. For ELP programs, if your LEA already has an ACES or CCL grant, it's very likely you already have some sort of system in place to collect attendance for those programs. The reason being that those two programs have a lot of detailed reporting requirements associated with them, and those reporting requirements will continue and remain the same. At some point, we hope to kind of integrate with CALPADS, but at this point, the differences aren't too much. So those programs generally have a system already collecting attendance data for ELP programs, and we actually met with some number of those vendors, about 10 or 12 of them, a couple months ago, just to give them a heads up that they will need to provide data to the student information systems in a manner that allows the student information systems to fulfill their ELP programs, program reporting to CALPADS. So those LEAs that already have some sort of system in place might be a little bit ahead of the game in terms of figuring out how to do all this reporting. If you're an for ELP, if you're an LEA who doesn't have an ACES or CCL grant and only had ELOP funding, you may not have a system in place because there was no reporting, individual level reporting that was required. So these LEAs, if you don't have something in place already, again, you might want to reach out to your SIS vendors to determine whether or not they have some sort of functionality that would meet this need. Okay, so Sean, should I just move on? I have no idea time-wise, or if we want to answer any questions.
There's one question at the top, P, if you want to answer it. 1052, that's fine. The
Okay.
second one I'm answering.
Okay, so
and
we
I
are
can't see the third one.
reporting ELP attendance data to CALPADS instead of the CVE as we have in the past. I think what you're confused about is there is reporting for ACES and CCL that exist already. That data, you've never actually submitted it to CALPADS, you've submitted it to the program office through the system that they have for that data. That will continue. You will now also send this data to CALPADS. So it is a bit duplicative, but there was no way for us to basically bring those all those collections together because of all the particular rules around the ACES and the CCL reporting. So we're aware of that duplication, and the goal is to be able to bring them together, but it was no time to do that this year. So hopefully that answers that question.
Got the next question, so if you want to move on, feel free.
Okay, so
Thank
I think okay, so Sunbucks. As you know, we sent out a really lengthy flash about Sunbucks 2025, I don't know, a month ago maybe, that's posted. We will be updating that flash, and rather than just adding new information, we're going to basically be replacing that flash with a new flash. And we will say upfront what are the substantive differences, of which there are only a couple. But one of the differences really resulted in changing kind of how the flash is organized. Hopefully it's a little bit more straightforward, but anyway, so that flash will be out hopefully next week sometime. And again, it will identify what's different up front, but it will look different. So just kind of alerting you to that. So what I was going to do today is not kind of reiterate that huge long flash that's already out there, but I wanted to kind of just reorient your terminology and thinking about Sunbucks. Hopefully that will make it more easy as we go forward to understand this program, because we understand it's really confusing. But one of the changes, or one of the, I guess you would call it changes, that came up really makes it much more easy, I believe, to understand the difference between what's called streamlined certified and non-streamlined certified. So that's what I was going to focus on today. So streamlined certified students are basically students who receive some bucks automatically, okay? You don't really have to do a thing. They're going to receive benefits. And the reason, well, and who are those students? Okay, those are students who are school age, that is 6 to 18. And actually, I forgot to modify this. Is actually as of the last day of the eligibility period, not the first. But regardless, you don't have to worry about that, because those kids are being pulled directly from the authoritative source of students who are participating in CalWORKs, CalFresh, or Medi-Cal at or below the 185th percentile of the federal poverty level. So that data is maintained in the Department of California Department of Social Services, CDSS, their system, and they're pulled directly from that system, which means that those students don't even need to be enrolled in a school participating in a federal meals program. They just need to be 6 to 18 and already participating in CalFresh, CalWORKs, Medi-Cal. Okay, so those kids are streamlined certified. You don't have to do a thing. Addresses are already in that system and so forth. Then there's another set of streamlined certified kids that CalPADS data is used for. And those are students who are categorically eligible based on their homeless, migrant, or foster status in CalPADS. These students don't need to be enrolled in a school that's participating in a federal meals program. So what we do is simply pull from CalPADS all the students who are enrolled in any school who are homeless, migrant, and foster. And as you know, for foster kids, we provide that data to you all, so you don't have to kind of upload anything regards to foster. And starting next year, we will be doing the same for migrant. So really for LEAs, the main group of students that you have to make sure their records in CalPADS for are the homeless students. And those kids will be automatically provided benefits as long as their homeless status is in CalPADS. We will, of course, continue to collect addresses also. So maintaining addresses in CalPADS is important so that we know where to mail cards to. So those are the streamlined certified, and that's probably 75% of the kids who are going to get $7. Okay, it's a biggest chunk. It's a big chunk of students, so you don't have to worry about them. They're going to get benefits for the most part. However, there's also a group of students who are not streamlined certified. They're the non-streamlined certified students, and this is where CalPADS and you all become involved. So who are the non-streamlined certified students? And this gets a little bit complicated, so you kind of got to think about it. But for streamlined certified, as I said, it's school-age kids, 6 to 18. Non-streamlined kids are any kids 0 to 22, but they have to be enrolled in a school participating in a federal meals program during the eligibility period. Okay, this means that given that the age frame is between 0 and 22, if you happen to enroll any preschool kids into CalPADS, we will pick them up and they will receive Sunbucks benefits, assuming they're eligible. Okay, so that's the main difference. The main difference between streamlined and non-streamlined is non-streamlined, they have to be enrolled in a school participating in a federal meals program, which is why we need to pull it from CalPADS, because only CalPADS knows that. Then, if they meet that first criteria, then they also have to be income eligible, okay? And unfortunately, right now, you have been submitting to us the 181 and 182 records, which show us that they're income eligible. However, to meet the requirements of Sunbucks, we need to know specifically if a student is eligible because they submitted and got it approved universal benefits application, which was discussed in the flash that's posted, or National School Lunch Program application. Okay. Before, when we had a waiver and we were able to use all income forms, it didn't matter. We can just take data out of 181. But now we don't know if a 181 record is based on a UBA, an SLP application, or alt income form. So we don't have that data and we can't use the 181. The other piece of specific data we don't know by just looking at the 181 or 182 record is whether your LEA, whether you have extended benefits to a student in a household who are eligible because another student in the household is directly certified. Okay. So if one student in a household is directly certified and the others are not, the LEA can extend benefits to those other students. And then I think what you all have been doing is submitting a 181 record. Well, we don't know that anymore because we don't know what's behind the 181 record. Okay, so that's one set of non-streamlined certified kids. And again, the main thing to think about is the fact that we're going to need to know the kids who have a UBA, an SLP application, or extended benefits. Now, to just make this a little bit more complicated, the other group that we don't know about are the non-streamlined certified students who are ages 0 to 5 and 19 to 22, who might be eligible for some bucks if they were directly certified through a local direct certification matching process. Okay, so if they were just certified through CALPADS or through a local direct cert matching process and they were ages 6 to 18, they're going to be pulled directly from the CDSS system. Okay. But again, for those kids 0 to 5 and 19 to 22, since CDSS is not pulling those age groups, they're not going to show up there. And also they must meet that second criteria of being enrolled in a school participating in a federal meals program. Okay. So that's why that piece of information, the local direct certified piece of information, we don't know because they're not directly certified in CALPADS, in which case we would know them. But if they're locally directly certified and you guys gave us a 181 record, we don't know. That's the basis upon which you submitted the 181 record. And just this is something you don't have to worry about, but we will also be pulling the homeless migrant and foster records for students who are 0 to 5, 19 through 22, or who are enrolled in a school participating in a federal meals program. That we already have in CALPADS. You don't have to do anything different. So this is why this year we are collecting in EDCS and not in CALPADS those discrete pieces of information that we don't know because we only collect at the higher level of a 181 record. And so what we will be collecting in the EDCS is whether the student has an approved UBA, whether or not the student has an approved SLP application, whether the student was directly certified through a local direct certification process. And that really applies just to kids who 0 to 5 and 19 through 22. And whether the student has benefits extended to them. Okay, so those are the discrete pieces of information that we'll be collecting in the supplemental SumBucks collection in EDCS. Just as a reminder, however, is that you will need to continue submitting 181 and 182 records to CALPADS because these kids will count as an unduplicated pupil count for your 1.17 report and the LCFF funding. They also will make them, SED for accountability purposes. So keep doing what you've always been doing, but in addition this year, we need this additional collection in the EDCS, which is described on this slide. So it's a fairly simple file, which will have the CDS code, SSID, local student ID, and at least one of the following. And if you will note, what we're going to be asking for is simply the date. the date the UBA was submitted, that will be one field, or the date of the NSLP application, or the date. So any of those four things. If you want to give us two things, that's fine, but really we just need one of them. And when will EDCS, okay, this is the reason why we emphasize the date is because by looking at the date, we know if they are within the eligibility period for SunBucks, which for 2025 is July 1, 2024, September 22nd, 2025. If you submit as part of this 2025 SunBucks administration dates outside of that range, the file will be rejected. And this is actually in the flash, so I'm not going to go over this, but the dates that are on the UBAs or NSLP apps or whatever is important in terms of whether or not students are eligible for which SunBucks administration. Okay, so that's it on SunBucks. Again, I'm not going to go over this. There's a couple tables in the existing Flash which are still relevant that go into a lot of detail about these dates and what dates do you need to submit to make them eligible for SunBucks or UPC, etc. So I encourage you to look at the Flash. So in terms of the EDCS collection overall, the 24-25 EDCS collection the EDCS is open for 24-25. It's open right now for ASFAB. The SSCE collection will open on June 1st. And for the SunBucks collection, we will let you know when that's open. We're just waiting for a little bit more information from our Nutrition Services division regarding some of the requirements about approval and verification and so forth. But it will be open shortly, and it will be open all the way through December 31st. So even though you need to get applications, families need to submit their applications. They have all the way until September 2nd, 2025 to get those applications to you. We're giving lots of time for you to then submit the applications to EDCS in order to provide benefits for the 2025 SunBucks. Okay, and that is the end of this.
Thank you, Paula, for the wealth of information and knowledge and sharing out. Again, if we do not get to your question in the Q&A, please follow up by submitting a service desk ticket so therefore we can adequately answer your question. Also, if you can make sure that it's a full question for us, who, what, when, where, why, with a question mark, so therefore we know what it is we're responding to. It'd be greatly appreciated. So moving on to our 25-26 fall 1 through 2 reviews. So our first update is for 25-26 is for ethnic studies. We've received requests for guidance on reporting of the ethnic studies course. The CDE does not currently have a reporting requirement for ethnic studies. So we are sharing out what we've seen LEAs do to approach the reporting of the ethnic studies course. The first way that we've seen this submitted is through LEAs. They have their historically and continue to track their ethnic studies in their local systems for which requirements it meets. And they just send up whichever record to us as a normal part of their course file submission. Again, the CDE does not currently have a reporting requirement for ethnic studies. The second way that we have seen this submitted is the class ID field can be used to link sections together in the LEA's master schedule. which was then reflected in the CRSE and C extracts. However, this will impact your CALPADS 3.1 class size by content area reports if you submit it with the 2 courses and associated 1 class ID. An example of what that looks like, though, is that you have a history course and an ethnic studies course. They are separate sections, but again, they're linked together by 1 class ID, such as 100. You see 2 different courses, same students, but again, that impacts your 3.1 report, which is often reviewed by your monitoring authority for compliance and misassignments. So if you're submitting it that way, please be cognizant. Again, the CDE does not have a reporting requirement, nor do we validate if students are meeting such requirements. That is done locally at the LEA on the students' transcripts, which is again indicated all by you all and your counselors. For our next update here, it is regarding itinerant or departmentalized assignments. On this slide and on the next slide, you will see reminders of how itinerant and departmentalized assignments should be noted within your CRSE files. This is important for this time of year because many LEAs are completing their master schedules or finalizing completion of their master schedules. So if you can get it in there now and tell your administrators versus them having to go back and do it once the new year has rolled over. So for this one, please note that the items in red are items on the FAQ that will be updated within the coming days. While many LEAs are taking advantage of part of the grant funding, sadly, less than 10% of LEAs are accurately reflecting their coursework in CALPADS for Fall 2 and EOY 1 in your course completion and grade 7 through 12 files. While it's important to teach literacy in all grade levels, the funding for literacy training is often primarily in the TK through 5 space, which absolutely makes sense. That's where literacy skills are ultimately developed. However, the current data that we see reflected in the course submissions for TK through 6 space, you all are not submitting distinct course codes, even if services are being provided. So for this reason, the CALPADS office has begun working with various program offices and state agencies to see how we can best place validations to prevent the erroneous reporting. Our validations, though, going in may ultimately affect funding for your most critical services and or at-risk students. So we continue to urge you to review your reports prior to your certification and ensure that the data is accurate and truly indicative of all services and courses being provided to students. And so again, here, this is just another one of the FAQs that highlights how to be able to report this information to your to CALPADS, but within your LEA. And then within the chat, you'll see that you can be able to use the CTC tool, the California on Teacher Credentialing tool, for appropriate credentials for CALPADS course codes. That information should be reviewed by the CALPADS data LEA, the CALPADS data LEA administrators, but also by your HR teams. So therefore, you can ensure that your 4.3 reports and your CRSE and E reports are accurate. Next up, we have some information from our CTE office. Their requirement changes. The new information regarding course completion within the CTE pathway is being introduced by the California CTE framework. This includes removing the 300 hours from the pathway completion. That requirement language will no longer be placed there for the two course, and it's being replaced by the two course pathway, sub-pathway sequence requirements. This shift in language transfer is to align with both federal and state goals and being provided to CTE students for equitable and consistent opportunities. Under the new state guidelines, the definition of a CTE completer for California will require all courses within a specific pathway or sub-pathway to meet the state standard for completer. For federal guidelines, however, a student must complete two courses within a CTE pathway or sub-pathway to be considered as a concentrator. This dual approach is allowing California to align again just with federal expectations while still maintaining our unique standards for recognizing comprehensive CTE program completions. And so what this ultimately means here is that, again, there is that federal and state alignment there. However, for LEAs, what that practical implementation looks like for you all, our CTE program office has recommended for secondary LEAs, you should code your CTE courses in your SIS systems to ensure you have some type of accuracy and identification and easily discerning which courses students are taking throughout their progress. And so they're recommending that you still label courses with participants, concentrators, and completers. Please note, though, on the next slides, we'll go over the definitions for what that truly looks like. The new two course sequence requirement, again, it enhances that flexibility, allowing for students to be more accessible and best prepare for their successful career trajectories upon their high school graduation and fully entry into CTE pathways and sub-pathways. And so what these new pathways will look like. Here you'll see detailed out for the definitions for participants, concentrators, and completers. I will review the purpose in identifying these three different completion levels. So the purpose for participants identify students who begin CTE coursework, but they may not complete any pathway or sub-pathway sequence. The purpose for identifying concentrators are students completing two designated courses within a pathway or sub-pathway and meeting both the revised state requirement and the current federal requirements. And then for the coding implications for the completion indicator. The completion indicator is recognizing students who complete an entire sequence of a pathway or sub-pathway and courses and securing that pathway mastery. I see a question in the chat for ethnic studies. Can the ethnic studies be combined with one of our English classes? Yes, as I reviewed in the example, I used history and ethnic studies as an example with that class ID as a combination. Yes, it can be Again, you just want to make sure and be cognizant of the 3.1 class size reporting if you are combining courses. And then for CTE, the next question I see is, what school year will the CTE requirement changes go into effect? This is for 25-26. So for the upcoming school year, this requirement will go into effect. And then for, I'm not sure of this question. I don't think it's complete. I don't see a question mark. So I'm gonna skip that one. And then, will there be a flash on CTE information? Thank you. That brings me to our next slide. So, information of where can it be found on CTE. The resources are here for the 24-27 draft for the federal Perkins 5 state plan. You will see that detailed there. The update for the 300 hours is listed in the public comment stating that removal. Please note that public comment closed on 4/7 of 2024, not 2025. So it's long since been closed. And then the Perkins forms and files can be found at the CTE webpage that is listed there. If there is information that is not included though, and you have questions regarding the CTE information, please ensure to be able to reach out to the Program and Administrative Support Office for CTE. And their email address that they've asked us to provide as a contact is perkins@cde.ca.gov. And with that, I will transition over to our wonderful Angela to provide you the additional resources and trainings.
Thank you a lot, Sean. Typically, we like to use this space to demonstrate any new features that are coming to CALPADS, and we recognized we didn't really have enough time for that today. So we do have a new feature coming to mid-resolution when you are merging a mid-anomaly. Rather than demonstrate it here, we are going to create a short video and announce that before it goes into production to give you a chance to review those changes. So for today, we're just really quickly going to go over the resources slide that you've seen if you've been to any of our trainings. Those are all links that you should have bookmarked on your browser. Next slide, please, Sean. And then another slide that you've seen if you have been to our trainings. We just want to point out that the best way to get a hold of the service desk if you need us is that top link, and that's accessible inside of CALPADS under Help Service Request. That's the fastest way to get a hold of us. And then the last two things I wanted to point out are at the bottom of this page. The two listservs, the last one is the mandatory one that you should be signed up for. It's the CALPADS listserv, and that's how you get a flash notifications or potentially notifications of the system going offline, that sort of thing. The one above that is the CSIS two-way listserv. That's an optional listserv, but it is a good resource for you to be able to collaborate with your colleagues out in the field. You can talk to each other, ask questions, post your retirement plans. We've seen job descriptions posted when people are leaving, that sort of thing. So if you are brand new and haven't signed up for that, we'd like to encourage you to do so. And I see a question from Rebecca about the video that will be coming out. It's a change to how the mid anomalies are merged, Rebecca. So we are going to record that and send that out before it goes to production. So keep an eye out for that. I don't have a timeline just yet. And that was all I had today. I think back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Angela. And so then next, we have our regional update meetings. We have a schedule for them already. We do not have this posted to the website. They are forthcoming and we will communicate out once they are available. However, as a best practice, we recommend placing a hold on your personal calendars, so you're ensuring to lock in that date and for which regional presentation you'll be attending. Times have not changed, just simply updated dates. Our newer heads of region flow changed. And so September 10th through the 9th, March 3rd through the 4th, and then May 5th through the 6th. Oh, and that the September 9th through the 10th date will be that next date that we see you all. And our focus then will be for fall 1 and for fall 2. Again, once the registration information is available, we will communicate well and getting that information out to you. So therefore you can go ahead and register. With that, we are only 1 minute over for this one. The other one's been a little bit longer. So we're going to be respectful of your time. Again, if we did not get to your question, please go ahead and submit a CalPADS service ticket, so that way we can address your question fully. We apologize for not being able to do so. Again, we were just really limited on time and the amount of information that we had to display out from our various program offices. And we just felt the need to be able to at least try and communicate that information out to you so you had it up in writing. And a lot of additional flashes will be coming out to convey it, but at least you have a starting point to be able to take back to your LEA certificated administrators to say, hey, here's what we need to get rolling. And then also what you need to be able to get done for the current 24-25 school year to close out for EOY. With that, though, we say thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you all. We see you all, we hear you all, and we value you all. Thank you to our sign language interpreters. Much appreciated having you here, and for our requesters from Riverside School of the Deaf, and I think Fresno is the other one. I'm not too positive, but we always try to meet the needs of everyone, and having this accommodation is truly great. And so with that, we will see you all at the 3 o'clock Q&A today. Or again, if you have questions, go ahead and submit a CalPADS ticket and we'll ensure to respond back to them. Again, thank you all so kindly.